If you've been following the evolution of Korean cinema and television over the past decade, you've likely noticed a recurring pattern where certain actors become synonymous with an era. And Kim Soo Hyun's early dominance with My Love from the Start placed him exactly in that position. Yet, what's far more interesting is not how he reached that peak, but how he managed the inevitable risk of typecasting that followed. Because playing an otherworldly, almost untouchable character like Do Min-jun could have easily confined him to roles that rely on charm and mystique rather than complexity, and industry analysts at the time speculated that his next steps would determine whether he remained a star or evolved into a respected actor, which makes his decision to take on the film reel particularly controversial, as it represented a drastic tonal shift into darker, more experimental territory. A move that initially received mixed critical reception and even disappointment from segments of his fanbase. But what often gets overlooked in retrospective discussions is how this project revealed his willingness to take creative risks that could potentially damage his image in the short term for the sake of long-term artistic growth. And this is where the narrative becomes more nuanced. Because while Real did not achieve the success many expected, it demonstrated that Kim Soo Hyun was not content with repeating formulas. And when you examine fan discussions years later, especially in online communities, there is a growing appreciation for that phase of his career as a necessary disruption that prevented stagnation, suggesting that failure, when analyzed correctly, can serve as a structural pivot rather than a setback. And by the time he transitioned into later projects, including his post-military comeback, the contrast between his earlier polished performances and his more layered, introspective acting became evident, reinforcing the idea that risk-taking, even when it leads to criticism, can expand an actor's range in ways that safe choices never could. So as we evaluate his trajectory, the real question becomes whether audiences today are more willing to embrace that complexity, or if they still prefer the idealized version of Kim Soo Hyun that first captured global attention. And how will that tension influence his future roles in an industry that constantly negotiates between artistic ambition and commercial expectation?